Who would have thought that after 10 years since the original PlayStation 3 version of The Last of Us dropped, there'd be a TV show about it on HBO, no less. It's helmed by the guy behind the Chernobyl limited series on HBO and Neil Druckmann, director of the games. I mean, you have pretty much a winning combo there. And then now it's out in the real world, waiting to be consumed by us, the viewers. Will it break from the video game adaptation curse or be all around amazing? I guess we'll have to find out. Hello, all you beautiful people. I kind of missed the jump to put this out there in a timely fashion when the first episode dropped. So, I waited. Then the second episode dropped and I'm like, okay, now it's time. Let me record this, let me do this, because I want to talk about The Last of Us. Like I said before, one of my all-time favorite games. And now there's a TV show adapting it, and I think that's pretty fucking awesome. It is, I think, so far, truly something special. Pretty much the story goes that there's some kind of crazy pandemic that outbreaks globally where an all too real fungus makes the jump to humans, causing them to sort of, I guess, mutate, attack each other, try to spread as much as possible, and pretty much destroy humanity in the process. Some 20 years later, there is a potential for a supposed cure in the form of a little girl who may or may not be immune to the virus. And so now you have this journey between Joel Miller, this 50-something-year-old dude from Texas, and Ellie, this little girl born into this crazy world, going on a journey across America to get to the Fireflies in the hopes that maybe just some way, somehow, they can make a cure out of her immune blood. Right off the bat, some of the more obvious casting choices that they made and announced, it sounded like it was going to be really good, at the very least acting wise. You have Pedro Pascal as Joel Miller, you have Bella Ramsey as Ellie. If for nothing else, those are the two most important characters who actually need to be well-rounded, good actors and be able to display a wide range of emotions. And so far, I feel like nothing's really been forced. They even quote the game a bunch of times. It's as faithful as it gets without it being a one-for-one remake in a sense. Although there are some moments in the first two episodes where literally it's framed exactly how it is in the game, taken straight from the game. It's really cool when you see that kind of thing. Production-wise, you can really tell that there was a lot of thought put into the look of the cities so far that they've shown. I mean, the first two episodes only show Boston, one small section of Boston inside a quarantine zone, and then a larger, more open section of literally post-apocalypse Boston. You've got buildings in the background falling apart that have already crashed into each other. You have fauna, grass, trees growing in the middle of the streets. If you've ever seen I Am Legend from years ago, I think it came out 2007 with Will Smith, think of that, but just the whole United States instead of just one city, New York City. Although so far, we've only seen Boston. With the first episode, it starts with this interview in 1968, I believe it was. And it's like this talk show host talking to some science guy, and he's explaining how funguses work, and the cordyceps fungus in particular. By the way, this is a very real fungus. Enters the host, and it kind of controls their brain and makes them do crazy stuff to pretty much spread the fungus as wide as possible. Look this up. There's different documentaries about it. It's pretty crazy when you see it, because like it really affects ants, especially in like Amazon rainforest, or probably not even Amazon, just rainforests in general. The fungus makes these ants go to like the highest point, they grow their little flower spout thing, and then it kind of just explodes, releasing all the spores everywhere, so that it can just infest as much of the area as possible. So in this sort of cold open, this science guy is talking about how very real this is, and that if the planet ever gets warmer, it could potentially, this fungus could make the jump to humans, and that would be catastrophic. The only real way to kill them is to just destroy them. Pretty much, you just gotta bomb cities, you gotta nuke everybody. Realistically, of course, you can't really nuke everybody. That would be crazy. After that opener, the show really starts on the day of the outbreak as it hits Texas, which is where Joel and his daughter and his brother Tommy are from. You pretty much start the episode from the perspective of Sarah Miller, Joel's daughter, played by Nico Parker. She is just stellar in that opening, and I love that they expanded on her. They basically keep the focus on her for most of the episode, and you really feel like she is an actual person in this world who is actually Joel Miller's daughter. She goes to school, she after school goes to the city to fix some watch and buy parts for this watch to get it fixed for Joel, because today's his birthday. All the while, little weird stuff in the backgrounds, maybe news stories or newspapers are in there littered throughout that, like, oh snaps, maybe something global is happening, maybe something weird's going on. A big difference from the game is that it actually starts in 2003, whereas the game starts in 2013. Then eventually it does a 20-year jump, so in the game it's actually taking place in 2033, but in the show they changed it so it's 2023. I also appreciate that because it kind of makes you feel like this could happen even more. This is their version of 2023. Imagine if 10 years ago something like that, 10 years ago something like that, 20 years ago something like that happened. How nuts would that be? That would be crazy, right? So things tend to build and build and build. You get this sense of dread throughout. It's kind of tense. And then once things go nuts, they kind of go nuts. All of a sudden, this little girl, Sarah, is witnessing acts of violence committed by her father. He kills the neighbor who is trying to attack her. They go off in their truck with Tommy. Tommy's driving, they go off. She's asking all these questions. Is it terrorists? Is it this? Is it that? What's going on? You know, and you're just kind of stuck with her in the car, just looking out of the car. You don't see any crazy aerial shots or anything like that. It just stays with her. It's not like a one shot or anything like that. That would have been really cool if they did that. But, you know, there's cuts, but you see what pretty much she sees, what Joel's seeing and Tommy sees. It just stays with them, mainly on Sarah. You don't know what is happening outside of that little bubble of what they're showing you. And I really appreciate that, because I'm all about perspectives. If you saw my War of the Worlds video from like 2 or 3 years ago, you would know I'm a big fan of staying in perspective of like one person for the most part when it comes to some kind of crazy global crisis. I really dig when it just stays with one person. You see their perspective for the most part. Eventually, tragedy befalls the Miller clan, and there you have the quintessential thing that just sparks the whole journey, that sparks and ignites everything that is Joel Miller. It leads to every single decision he makes, at least in the video game. It looks like so far it's going to be the same thing with the show. Like I said before, if there's any changes, it's in service to the characters. I know that they're expanding certain things. I mean, obviously they expanded on Sarah. You know, you pretty much start the game with her waking up to Joel coming home from work later that night on his birthday. She falls asleep and then she wakes up. It's like 3 a.m. You start playing as her in the game, and you're going through the house trying to look for her dad because he's clearly not home and stuff. The show is like, no, we gotta start it on that morning and stick with Sarah the whole time until we clearly cannot stick with her any longer. And props to Nico Parker for killing it as Sarah. She has a very big role to fill amongst a lot of video game nerds, but not even that, just to carry like most of the first episode. Tommy's there He's played by Gabriel Luna. I think he's a good casting choice, but you don't really get to see him. You can kind of sense from the short time that he's there, he's kind of like maybe the black sheep of the family in a way, or like, you know, like the rebellious brother, whereas Joel is the more responsible one. Tommy is the one always getting in trouble and doing weird stuff. The show cuts 20 years later, quarantine zone, Boston. Martial laws imposed. Joel is now a 50-something-year-old man trying to make ends meet, doing work for the soldiers that they have to do. They burn the bodies of people who are infected. Every decision that he makes, everything that he does, it's clear, it's on his face, and I think Pedro is a wonderful choice to be Joel Miller. It's a shitty world they live in part because of the military rule, but obviously a big part of it is the death of the whole world because of this crazy virus. You're also introduced to Tess, who they've also expanded on a bit, played by Anna Torv. If you've watched Mindhunters, she's a very important character in that show. She is now here. It seems like she is maybe, possibly, with Joel. You don't really get that sense in the game either. If they are together, they could just be kind of living together. There is, you know, like a subtleness to it where maybe they're possibly involved romantically. The show does some things to make it seem that way, but nothing is in your face, and I like that. You keep it vague. It's open to interpretation. They could just be really good friends. I really appreciate how so far they've really gone out of their way to expand on the characters. So I'm really excited to see where it goes from there. But you know, there's a bunch of characters along the way. One of them is Marlene, of course. She is the leader of the Fireflies Resistance. The Fireflies are like a rebel group that are against the military law, that are really trying to find a cure and do all sorts of things, but you can obviously tell they've had to get their hands dirty too. Nobody is clean in this show. Everybody has at some point probably had to kill somebody or do something really shitty to your fellow man to get by. Interestingly enough, Marlene is played by the same actress that she played in the video game. And then of course through Marlene we are also introduced to Ellie. If Sarah's probably the most important character of the first episode, Ellie is the most important character of the whole shebang. You're introduced to her in the towards the end of the first episode. She's played by Bella Ramsey. She is not Sarah Miller. She is not Joel's daughter. She is rambunctious, rebellious, has attitude, is probably willing to kill someone. She's only 14. That means she was born into this world versus Sarah, who was born before the world went to shit. In their own ways, they're both integral, important characters, but they are a bit of a contrast to each other. Ellie will not always think things through, will probably charge headfirst towards something, but she's also resilient and will never give up. Sarah is insanely, ridiculously kind, and you can tell that she's such a kind-hearted character, but she's also a little naive. She's still young, and on top of that, she wasn't really forced to grow up, whereas Ellie was born into this world and had to become basically a grown-up at an early age. And then the first episode basically ends with this proposition given to Joel and Tess by Marlene to transport Ellie outside of the quarantine zone so Ellie can get dropped off by other Fireflies that are waiting at the Capitol building in Boston. And then Joel and Tess, they can get what Marlene promised them so that Joel can find Tommy, because they lost contact with Tommy some time ago. Which is also neat because in the game, they don't really touch on that. You kind of get the sense that they're just comfortable with being in the quarantine zone, that that's just their life. Maybe one day they'll get out, but at this point in time, they're just gonna do whatever they gotta do to just survive in the moment. Whereas in the show, they sort of expanded on that and was like, all right, well, they wanna get out, they gotta do all these things so that they can secure a vehicle and other shit so they can get the hell out. So episode 2 comes along and it's like, all right, well, the infected, how does the virus affect them? How are they crazy, creepy? I think it does an amazing job at making them really fucking creepy. So props to the makeup department, props to the set design too, because literally the city is in ruins. They changed a few things from the game. There's no longer like those spored areas where you have to wear a gas mask because you can get infected like that or just die basically from breathing in the spores. The show's creator, I believe his name is Craig Mazin, he said that in a video game it kind of makes sense, but in a live action TV show it sort of doesn't. I dig that. Again, whatever changes they made, it just makes the TV show all the more better. It's in service to make the live action version better and not feel, I guess, super video gamey in a way. Now the infected also have these sort of like tentacle things that come out of their mouth, and when you see that, my skin crawls. Like, it's really fucking creepy. There's like this like whole kiss of death aspect. They'll just like come to you, and it's almost like Alien in a way. It looks like it's bordering on sexual assault. They're literally like kissing you, and these things are going in your mouth sort of forcefully. They talk about like a whole network of roots underground, and think of it like this. If there's someone who's infected, and let's say there's some roots lying around that are, you know, they look fresh, they're not dried out, they get shot, killed, the roots like can kind of detect or tell like, oh hey, by the way, there was this noise over here and one of my infected is down in this spot. And so if there's a horde of infected over in East Bumblefuck nowhere, they'll be alerted to exactly where your position is, and you're pretty much screwed. In the second episode in particular, they have to go through the museum to cut across to get to the Capitol building, and inside the museum there's a few of the infected in there. In the game they're called clickers, so going forward, I'm just going to call them clickers. They haven't put a name to them in the TV show, so I'm hoping eventually they do, but if not, it's not the end of the world. Those clickers look crazy. They did apply some CGI, I think, to like the fungus that sprouts out of their head. As the infection progresses, you don't need your eyes anymore, you go blind. It's all based on sound. So if you make a peep, you're pretty much done for, unless you could fight them off somehow with, you know, whatever little ammo you have. Yeah, with the second episode, you know, they really talk about the infected, but I'm gonna try to leave it at that for the most part, because I don't want to spoil anything about the second episode. Let's just say in this world, hope is almost like a disease. One way or another, things get more and more complicated. Not everything is always as it seems, and people in general are just kind of terrible. Another thing to note is the music. So far, there has been some original stuff, it sounds like, but there has also been a lot of tracks from the game. They got the same composer from the game to be involved in the game. There was a lot of guitar playing, not like electric guitar, acoustic guitar. They've made it sound a bit more full. I'm gonna try to do this every week for each episode. I think that would be fun. That would be really cool, and it would really test my commitment to doing these reviews and just sticking to YouTube in general. Like I keep saying, The Last of Us is one of my favorite video games of all time, and to see it adapted in such a fantastic way is pretty amazing. What a time to be alive. I look forward to every episode. My plan is to have some footage of the game playing in the video, and then me here talking to you. It will all be like up in a little corner somewhere. I'll figure it out in editing, and I think that would be like a nice little unique way to see the game a little bit, but also hear me talk about the TV show. So let me know what you think of the show and what you think of the game. It'd be very interesting to hear any of your guys' thoughts on either subject or both. Do you like that they've made the changes that they've made? Do you prefer they just, shot for shot remake of the game? I, for one, believe that it's really cool that they've kind of expanded upon like the pre-apocalypse and the post-apocalypse in a really nice way. And I really look forward to a lot of things because there's so much that happens, and not all of it's pretty, but it's so beautiful and great, and I'm so happy that they made this, and it's so far been really, really good. I'm not gonna do like a legit score just yet. I'll probably save that for the end, and then I can talk about like the show on a whole. Like, hey, by the way, the show is ass. The first 2 episodes were great, and then everything else was shit. I give it, whatever, 4 out of 10 pancakes or something silly like that. Or it turns out it's amazing, 10 out of 10 pancakes. I want to wait till the end to really judge it. At the very least, the first 2 episodes have been fantastic. I am super duper excited to see the next episode, super duper excited to see where they go, if they're gonna meet expectations, but also kind of change things up from the game to surprise us. I don't know what they're gonna do. It's anybody's guess. They've been pretty faithful to the game, but at the same time, they've kind of expanded on the game. And by expanding on these characters and stories, they've made some changes, and I think some of the changes are great for the TV show itself. I wouldn't change those things for the game at all if they ever decide to remake it for the 15th time. For the TV show, it makes sense, it's good, it's in service of the plot, the characters, you know, it fits live action better. It really makes me wish they put this much detail and thought into the Uncharted movie. Like, what were you guys thinking with that? In any case, let me know what you think. Would you prefer that the show be shot for shot like the game, or its own completely different thing? I doubt it, because, you know, who would want that? You'd want to be faithful, but also make things make sense for live action and for the type of story that you're trying to tell, right? I think that makes sense. But yeah, you know, just let me know in the comments what you think of the game, the TV show, all the stuffs. If you like the video, you can like the video. And if you want to see more, subscribe. Okay, I love you. Bye-bye.
Oh yeah, that's a good coffee.